Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion, and we talked about the disconnect. Well, the disconnect did begin on Monday. It came back in and it took a little bit of a place again here on Tuesday. And now, as we get into Wednesday, we'll see how that's starting to play out as well. But going back to yesterday really quickly, you look at the Dow had some pressure. Dow was down well over 300 points at its lows, started to make a little bit of a comeback, and that's where the dislocation really started to come into place, because as it was making that comeback, you look over at the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ just continued to go lower and lower and lower. And so as we finished up the day, it's just amazing to see that the Dow recovered all the way back from being down well over 300 points to actually get into the green and finish up about 20 points. But not the same story for the NASDAQ. However, the NASDAQ did have a little bit of a bounce in the final 15, maybe 20 minutes of the trading session, where it got off of its lows, down about 300 points to finish off about 240, 260, somewhere in that range. Pretty significant hit for the NASDAQ yesterday. So that really did stand out. We talk about volatility all the time. We talked about this range and how it's been steadily kind of pushing up and pushing up. And yesterday, it certainly did that. It got all the way up just underneath 22. We got to 21.85 yesterday on the highs. That was earlier in the day. That was when the Dow was getting crushed along with the NASDAQ. As the Dow started to come off of those numbers and started to move towards the upside and finish into the green, that's where we started to see the volatility index kind of easing off of those lows, or actually coming off those lows fairly rapidly, and then getting back below that 20 level, closing right around that 1975, somewhere in there. So a really interesting day. The volatility, yes, it was volatile. And by the way, the volumes yesterday, 36 million. So we continue to have this strong volume supporting what we are seeing in front of us each and every day. Crude got up towards that 66 level. Bitcoin got hammered pretty decent yesterday. That got pushed all the way down. It was down about 5% or so underneath 55,000. So it's one of these days where just a little bit of shifting it around, and you felt some of that negativity, there's no doubt. So you look at the NASDAQ, and of course, you look over at technology, that was down a couple of percent. You look over at the semiconductors, that was down over 1%. You look at biotech, that was getting hammered once again, down about 4% yesterday. We did have strength in two different areas, and I'm going to highlight some individual names as well, but materials continue to be very, very powerful. Financials as well hit 52-week highs yesterday. I don't know if you knew that, because I'm not so sure how many folks were really pointing that out, but that was really interesting. So I'm going to focus on two different things. In the material space, there are so many different names that you could go to look at, but I look at U.S. Steel, because U.S. Steel, old, tried and true, old company that we all have known about for a long time, that was up over 7% yesterday. And I know Cliffs was up over 11%, but when you look at U.S. Steel, and that's a name that everybody's very, very familiar with, and you see that, that says a lot about what we're talking about in the material space and the strength that we have been seeing in this particular area as inflation is starting to show up a little bit more and a little bit more. We look at lumber, we look at copper, we look at all these various things, and you can see what's happening in front of us. So I talked about the financials as well, hitting 52-week highs. How about Capital One? Now, this is a name that absolutely has been soaring for the last year, and I mean just taking off. And if you look at whatever time frame you want to look at, Capital One has been very, very impressive. Yesterday hit new 52-week highs. It's been absolutely a growth stock. You just take a look, their earnings, they really have had just everything going their way so far. Don't forget, this is a company that is primarily credit cards, but also considered a financial, it's bank and all the rest of that kind of thing. But obviously, I think that a lot of people just look at it and say, oh, Capital One, that's a financial, that's a bank, that's this, that's that. They don't realize that the revenue that's really generated, the dominating revenue there, is in the credit card space. So today, a little bit of a disconnect starting off. It's kind of interesting. We had Dow up about 60 points, but the NASDAQ outperforming, not only up 90 points, but obviously percentage-wise, really looking much more strong. Looked like we want to make a great little comeback after that hard selling yesterday. Got to the open, we were up about 100 points on the NASDAQ, a little bit almost unchanged when you look at the Dow. Dow started to steadily pull back. Matter of fact, let me take a quick look right now, because the Dow started to slip back. We actually got into the red. Now we're only down about 30 points on the Dow, and we've recovered a little bit now on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ actually got down into the red as well, got kind of flat, kind of hanging around there. Now it's up about 35 points. So we are seeing a little bit of a recovery off of the lows for both of those two in this first hour of trade. So, of course, we got a long day in front of us and a lot can happen. We saw an amazing day yesterday in that recovery in the Dow. Crude, take a look at where that is right now, up and over that 66 level, 66.50, I think is the number that I saw earlier. I see the volatility index still trading somewhere in the 18s, the 18 and a half sort of a range. So it really is telling that we are seeing vol kind of hold up a little bit because of some of this intraday movement that we are seeing, much like we were seeing weeks and weeks ago when we had the intraday, not just the where did it open, where did it close. I'm talking about the movement in between, which is very important. So early on today, we had Moderna, that was looking pretty strong. We had Activision, that was looking pretty strong. Penn, Caesars, they were all looking very, very solid early in the day. And then we've seen a little bit of an easing back. As a matter of fact, technology, which was up 1%, that's kind of slid back a little bit. Consumer discretionary, that was pretty strong, but energy continues to hold on to its strength. As a matter of fact, up about 2.5%. And speaking of energy, let's focus a little bit on the specific areas of energy. Yes, Chevron's doing really well. Love this name. I own this name, and I think it's a quality name. We've just gotten through the earnings season of Chevron and Exxon and so forth. But I love focusing on these beta names. So look at the XOP. Now, we talked about this one in the past. I'm talking about it again today because of the fact when you look at what is some of the leadership, why is energy up 2+% in terms of these different sectors? Well, Devon, Occidental, Apache, Marathon, all of those names of Diamondback, all of those names really, really having some very nice, solid performance today. So that buoying that. On the other side of things, on the earnings front, take a look at what's going on with Under Armour, hitting 52-week highs today. Now, this is a name a lot had just basically forgotten about, and they've left it for dead. They've been making some nice strides. They've done a lot of things within the company itself to change what their model looks like. And I'll tell you what, the focus on DTC, direct to consumer, as well as e-commerce has been very, very meaningful for this company. They put up some incredible numbers. Matter of fact, their revenue growth 35% year over year. Obviously, they're doing a lot of things right, and they have really pushed in the right direction. When you look at their North American and their international growth, it really does stand out. That's a name that did hit 52-week highs again today, so that was great to see. Got two unusuals, and we're going to get out of here for you and give you a chance to get into the trading day. Workhorse. Now, we've talked about this name in the past, and we've seen this name in the past. You know, you look in the EV space, the electric vehicles, you look at batteries and all the rest of that. This is where this finds itself. And I'll tell you what, stock was trading about 11.20. These are fairly inexpensive. I like it, but it's only 2 weeks. You get you get this week and next week because May 14th, these expire. They're buying the 12 calls. The stock was trading about 11.20 at the time. They're buying the 12 strike calls out to May 14th. Those are going for about 60 cents up to about 64 cents. So risk reward, not so bad. Time frame, you've got a nice tight time frame, but enough time for a stock like this to make a move. It certainly is a stock that can move very, very rapidly, both up and down, but seeing those bullish calls bought today. AMT is my other one. Now this one, American Tower is pretty interesting company. It's trading, it's off about $10 in the last week. So it's pulling back. And now we're seeing some bullish paper start to step in. Not huge, but stock trading at 245.66. We did see some buyers there. A buyer of 2,500 of Fridays, May 7th. That's Friday. So you've got today, Thursday, Friday. These have got to work between now and then. They're buying the 250 strike calls, and they were going for just a little over $1. So that one definitely stood out for me because of the fact that the stock had made this tremendous run, and now it's been pulling back. And obviously, in a fairly short time frame, as I said, about the last week or so, down about $10. So it's interesting to see somebody out there deciding, hey, you know what? We think there's a little bit of a bounce potentially coming in this stock. So we'll see if they're right about that. Now, just King, you're going to love knowing more and more about the derivatives markets. There's no doubt we've got some of the very best in the business out there to educate you, to give you the understanding of these options, how they work, how the derivatives markets work. And again, 36 million contracts yesterday. This is the place to be because this is where growth continues to be in this market. Folks, have a great day of trading.